Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest is going to talk about being unfulfilled in the traditional workforce. She decided to go out on her own and now is breaking all the rules in running her own business. Please help me welcome Emily LaPrairie. Emily, it's so great to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Claudia, how are you?
I am well, and I am even better once you came on the screen because I love your hair. It is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
I'm guessing that matches your personality, right?
Yeah, I would have to say so. Basically, I'm somebody who doesn't like to follow rules. So
I like that. As a rule follower, I appreciate that. Recently, my husband and I were looking at some property and we parked with our realtor in somewhere that you were supposed to pay for parking. And the realtor and my husband were like, oh, we're not going to be in there that long. We don't have to pay. And girl, it was freaking me out the whole time. I was like, you guys are like really messing with the rule follower side of me here. We did not get tickets, so it was great. But I appreciate someone like yourself who is a little bit more free-flowing than me.
Right.
Yes. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself other than you have gorgeous hair and don't like to follow the rules?
Sure. Well, my name is Emily, and I actually I'm a multitude of things. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I am a business coach, consultant, advocate, and artist. And I also work with careers. But I focus mainly on neurodivergent and trauma affected people. And the reason why I do that is because I spent a very, very long time in the workforce, obviously. I went from career to career. I was a server, I was a nurse assistant and a nursing student. I was a bookkeeper, an office manager. I was a karaoke DJ. I was just all these things, right? And in every single position, even if it was a great job, right? Even if I actually really loved the job and the people that I worked with, I eventually hated the job because I always felt like my needs had to be sacrificed for the job. And even if they didn't, like I had to get permission to like address my needs, and I just really grew to resent it. And then also because I'm neurodivergent, I have ADHD and I also have CPTSD. My needs are nuanced. They're a little different. And I never felt comfortable talking about that. And I never felt, comfortable actually advocating for myself in the workforce. And so I kept just telling myself, all right, that's fine. We're going to go to school for business. We're going to start our own business and we're going to get out of the workforce. I did that back and forth about 4 times. And I kept crashing and burning and then having to go back to the workforce. Well, because I was still holding on to those neurotypical mindsets about how we're supposed to run a business, right? So, I did. I have a degree in small business management and entrepreneurship. That degree taught me everything that you're supposed to do if you're following the rules. And so, of course, it didn't work for me, right? So it didn't actually start working. My journey of entrepreneurship did not start working for me until I stopped following the rules that were so rigidly laid out in all of these textbooks and started building my business around me. So, and then as soon as I started doing that, I started talking to more people about it. They started referring to me as a coach. At first, I was very, very resistant. I didn't want to be a coach because everybody is a coach nowadays, and a lot of them shouldn't really be coaching. And I just didn't want to be in that category. But eventually I decided, well, it wasn't me who chose this. Like other people are seeing this in me, so there must be something there, right? And so I chose to lean into it. Beginning of this year, I launched my coaching business.
That is fantastic. I want to start with the fact that one, that you were a server at one point, and I want to just say, I think everybody should have to do that for, I don't know, 6 months, 2 months, a period of time in their lives. Everyone should be a server. I think they will look at life and other servers very differently after that. So thank you for doing that, and hopefully not punching customers while you were. Will you talk a little bit about neurodivergent for those who aren't familiar with that term?
Absolutely. So neurodivergent just refers to a brain that works in a different way than what it's typically supposed to work in. So the common neurodivergences are autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome, epilepsy, and that's where it starts to get a little gray. My interpretation of neurodivergence is anything that causes your brain to act a little or a lot different, right? And so that would include any kind of nature related differences, such as, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, anything like that. But then it also includes some nurture related, like PTSD and CPTSD, borderline personality disorder, which is often stemmed from PTSD, is also a form of neurodivergence in my definition of it. I think the actual definition of it does not include all of those things, but there is a vast umbrella of neurodivergence. And there are just some things that are like, are we under the umbrella or are we not? I say they are, because all of those brains are diverse. And, that's really what, if we're being honest, I do believe that everybody does have a little bit of neurodivergence in them, but the ones who embrace it are the ones who are actually neurodivergent. Whereas the ones that we talk about as neurotypical, those are the ones that are masking it, right? And that's not to say that, because I know neurodivergent, that term actually started out as a term for autistic inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that everybody has a little bit of autism, because that's a really awful thing to say. Everybody's brain works a little bit differently, but the people that insist on forcing their brains to work in the way that the textbooks tell us to, do all the things that they're supposed to do, those are our neurotypical people. And those neurotypical people are the ones that have built the foundations with which we work and build businesses on.
So you mentioned before that being in the traditional workplace, that a lot of times you struggled to request or ask or make sure that your needs were met. Is that something that you dealt with in other aspects of your life as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. There is a lot of guilt and shame around making sure your needs are met, around asking for what you need, or just doing it yourself. There's, especially with women, there's a whole martyr complex around like the way we live, when it comes to friendships, romantic relationships, mother-daughter, or like sisters, those kind of relationships. There's just always that sort of pull. Do you need me to do more? I'm so sorry. Should I have not done that? I don't really need that. We're never, ever being true to ourselves, because we've been taught that we need to always look out for the next person. And what if, instead of always looking out for everybody else, we focused on ourselves and everybody else focused on on their selves? And if we truly saw somebody in need, we could help them, but not always anticipating that they need us when they don't. And instead tending to our own needs.
why do we struggle with that? Why has that been ingrained in us? And like you said, especially as women, what do you think that comes from in society?
I think that it comes from the patriarchy. I really do. And when I say the patriarchy, so when I first started hearing this word, the patriarchy, really thrown about, I automatically thought it sounded like, oh, these are man haters, right? These are people who hate men. And I don't hate men. I love men. I have a son and I have a partner who I adore. That's not actually what it is. And I'm so happy that I now know this. So the patriarchy is a system, right, that has created roles for each gender, well, for the two genders that the two traditional gender roles that they accept.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is supposed to be strong and silent and the protector and the person who brings home the bacon. And the other one is supposed to be loving and nurturing and baking and crying and all of these things. And when we try to get out of these roles, when we try to kind of branch out, everybody around us goes, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to be this. This is your role. Even if they're not saying that, like, they don't have to say this is your role to be like, are you sure you want to do that? Whoa, this is strange. You're always so weird. You're always so quirky. Like, you don't act like other girls. You don't act like other women.
I will say I do like to bake, so there is that. But, I agree with you. And I wonder sometimes, because there is such a push lately of self-care. And people saying, oh, you have to put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. Is that enough? Is that enough of telling people to take care of themselves to break down the patriarchy? Or do we need to be doing more?
We can't do it as a separate entity. Like, we can't do it singularly. We need to do it as a movement, right? We need to have large corporations and organizations backing this dismantling of this really antiquated system that is holding us all back, right? It's actually part of what I am now focusing on. Although I am a coach for singular people, I'm realizing that my services are actually probably going to be better put to use when I'm talking to companies and corporations, right? So for an example, when I was at my last job, which I absolutely loved my last job, by the way, loved everybody that I work with. My employer was a wonderful man, and I would never want to burn a bridge with him. But he was older, he's an older gentleman, and he had certain thoughts about people of different ethnicities that, as somebody who lives in a multi-race family, my boyfriend and his daughter are Hispanic, it made me feel very, very uncomfortable feeling positive about this man in any way. Like, when he would go off about that, but like, I did not feel comfortable talking to him about that. So I would just like rage at the copier and like throw things around and be like, oh God, I just want to go home today. I just can't stand being around him. And so that's an example of like a silent rupture in the workforce. And it's an example of one of the ways that the patriarchy has held certain people down. In this sense, his views on that were fueled by the patriarchy's ideas of people of different colors and different cultures, right? So if the container was set at that office for me to have a private conversation with him where I said, hey, this is really uncomfortable for me, and here's why. Is there any way that we can come to some sort of agreement where maybe you don't talk about that stuff at the office? Or is there any way that I can help to clear up some of your confusion on this particular culture. But there was never that container. So I wonder if I start helping companies set that container for problems of race, for problems of gender, for problems of neurodivergence and trauma, what good can I start then, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And, maybe we just found a new path, for part of your business. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You said you worked in a lot of different places and you often turn to hate it. Even if you love your job, you just ended up not loving it. Was that always because of something within you, or were there toxic circumstances? I mean, you just talked about one with the boss. Were there other toxic circumstances in those work environments that were troubling for you?
Absolutely. I would say there was a toxic environment or experience at every job I've ever had. The only one that it wasn't actually the people I was working with was when I was a crisis office worker at a domestic violence shelter. And then I was regularly traumatized by what I saw. But the people that I worked with were all psychologists, therapists, social workers. They were amazing. They were the people that I want to kind of base, how they treated me is how I kind of want to base this whole consultation idea off of. But anything other than that, absolutely. I've had a lot of really interesting things said to me and thrown my way. One that always sticks out in my mind was I had worked for a family restaurant for about 3 years. And this was when I was younger. I started working for them when I was 18. I got pregnant with my son when I was 20. And I remember them kind of joking with me while I was pregnant that my body wasn't going to be the same. And which was inappropriate in itself, but I didn't really, realize that right off the bat. And then so I had my baby and I came back to work 6 weeks later, and I'm in the thick of postpartum depression. And my boss, who was a 6'4", darn near 300-pound man, comes up to me and he says, "I thought you said your ass wasn't going to get any bigger after you had the baby, Emily, because it's 10 times the size that it was before." And I will never forget that. I mean, I just everything stopped. Everything just stopped in slow motion. I had plates in my hand. I set them down and I just walked to the bathroom and I just sobbed. Just why? Why would you say that to somebody who just had a baby? Why would you say that at all? Right? But especially, it was almost as if, and I got this feeling a lot working at that particular restaurant, that particular owner, it was a family owned, his dad owned it, but they had a terrible childhood. They were just a very abusive family. And it was almost like he would get bored, so he would
Flash out,
verbally abuse somebody. Yes. And I got the brunt of it because I cried a lot, because I cried very easily, because part of having ADHD is being highly sensitive. I did not know that until the last, I'd say, year and a half. I could never understand why I would cry at the drop of a hat. That's why I almost teared up just telling you the story about him talking about my big ass. So yeah.
Did you see that behavior? I know you said you took the brunt of it, but did you see it occurring with other people as well?
To a certain extent. I actually went and worked for this man again. He left his father's restaurant, opened his own restaurant, and I worked for him there too. And there was one girl that was already, when I started working for him, was already that person. And meanwhile, I should say this too, that this man acted like a big brother to me and acted like he absolutely adored me. And when I needed a job, I came to him and he hired me on the spot, no questions asked, go ahead, start tomorrow. It was family, but he was awful at the same time. So when I first started working at his new restaurant, there was somebody who was already in that position. And then I quickly became that person as well.
How hard is that to reconcile for you? Because you said, he was like a big brother, but at the same time, he treated you like shit at times.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the other employer, the older guy who, let's just say, was racist, but otherwise to you was a good guy. How tough was that for you to reconcile those things in your mind for these people?
By reconcile, do you mean forgive them?
Just to deal with it, I guess, on the day to day.
Well, I ended up leaving both jobs. I'm not somebody who can forget about something like that. It festers. It festers within me until I am able to do something about it, which 10 times out of 10 with my jobs was to leave, make a move, leave. So
was it frustrating for you when you would make that move and then be in a similar situation yet again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what was more frustrating was the fact that I would usually make the move on a whim and then not have another job to back it up, which was why I ended up working at his restaurant in the first place. That was why I ended up working at his second restaurant in the first place, was that I quit my job without having a backup and needed a job. And I'm like, oh, he'll hire me. He's going to hire me. And he did. Of course he did, because he wants somebody to pick at. Right. Yeah. So it's impossible for me to forget something like that, honestly. My worst experience, my absolute worst experience was actually not either of those men, not even close. It was another man, much older gentleman. He was almost 80 and had decided to start a grain trading company, an organic grain trading company. And I had come on as his part-time bookkeeper, straight out of college. And that environment was the most toxic environment I have ever worked in. He was regularly gone in Iowa. It was just, because I'm from Michigan, it was just him, myself, and then the person who he put sort of like in charge, she was a former vice president of a large bank in the area. And she left the bank because of issues, I don't know, and then came to work for him. So she was very, she loved control. And so she was used to having a team under her. She just had me. So that was horrible. And I was put on medication because like she would just like prod at me until, and gosh, I can't even. Okay, so for example, I went to the post office one time and I forgot the address of who I was sending whatever I was sending to. And so I just gave her a quick text and I said, hey, can you send me that address? I left it on my desk. So she sent it to me. When I got back, she pulled me into her office for 2 hours and talked about how I was slipping. She wanted to know what was going on in my life. Something's obviously happening. And like, she made me like make things happen. I was like, yeah, obviously I'm stressed, like I want to be at home. I want to be with my son. I am, whatever. Right. And as soon as I cried, she kind of leaned back, like satisfied. And she was like, okay, that's fine. You can. And so I eventually told her, okay, obviously there's something going on because you said that I was good before and now I'm not good. So I'm going to go to the doctor about it. I'm going to try to get on some medicine. And so I got on some medicine for like depression and like brain fog basically. And it worked for a while until it made me feel like sick to my stomach. And so I had to get off of it. So then I go to the doctor and I say, okay, I need to get off of this medicine. It's making me sick. And now I'm like breaking out in a rash on my side because of this medicine. And she looks at it and she goes, actually, that's shingles. And I was like, shingles? At this point, I was 28, 29. And she said, you either have an autoimmune disease or you are under extreme stress. And I said, well, I don't have an autoimmune disease. So that was that experience, and it only got worse. She ended up leaving. And so I was given her position with a $2 an hour raise. I started out making $14 an hour, and she was making salary $50K. So they gave me her position plus my position at $16 an hour, which is, I'll do the math for you, ladies and gentlemen, it is not $50K. And so I just was given more and more things were put on my plate. I was then the head accountant. I was the head office manager. I was in charge of all the farmers. I was the director of transportation, and I was the director of safety.
That's a lot.
Yes. And I had no idea how to do all but two of them. You know, I knew how to run an office and I knew how to do bookkeeping. Like, so it just kind of, I just kept getting more and more. And I finally addressed it. And I tried to address it with, you know, the older gentleman and his board, which was all in a different state. You know, I tried to address it with them, and it was ignored until we were in a meeting with our other, because at that point we had other employees. We had one other office worker, soon to be two other office workers, and we had a somebody who worked at the railroad because we worked with train loads. And so in front of all these other people, he brings up all of the things that I brought up about my personal discrepancies, and then asked them, the other people, if it was an issue for them personally. And they were like, well, no, we don't have these same issues. And then he's like, so then what the hell is your problem? And I was just dumbfounded. So I went on working, but that was, of course, festering, right? That was absolutely festering in me, that he called me out and basically said, if other people don't have the same problems as you, then you're lying. You don't have a problem. So I left for work, or I left early one day. It was a Friday. And I left load paperwork on my desk because I had a spot where they go before I enter them into the system, and then a spot where they go after. Well, these were before loads. So I left them there, came back on Monday. I did not realize that they were gone. But I'm doing my daily position report. I have to find out where every single bushel of corn and wheat is that we own, which is thousands and thousands. And I was coming up short, and I couldn't understand why. So I, of course, went to him and I accepted full responsibility for it. I said, the daily position report is my responsibility. I'm going to find out where these missing loads are, because I really don't know what's happening. So I spent 2 days going over the entire year. This was in May. So I reconciled 5 months over the course of 2 days. I had papers stacked this high in front of me, just kind of like poring over them. And I finally go to him at close to the end of the second day. And I said, I really have no idea what's going on. I cannot find them. I'm so sorry. He said, okay, that's fine. Thank you for checking. I will go ahead and do my best to look at it this evening. So the next day, he calls me and then the other office worker in his office at around noon. And he says, I want to teach you both something. This is going to be a lesson in paperwork and security. And so I said, okay. He holds up the load papers. He goes, you left these on your desk. So of course I took them. And I'm like, wait a second. He goes, so you just left them on your desk. Anybody could have broken into our office in the middle of the night and had all of our information for these loads, which this is just preposterous at this point. I'm like, who is breaking into a grain company to steal load paperwork? Come on.
You're not a cartel, okay?
No. And we had like full on security. We had alarm systems. We had cameras. I'm like, why would they not be safe on my desk? We're the only people in this office ever. So he then, just proceeds to tell me, how I've screwed up so much. And that was one of the times where I didn't just let it fester and then just kind of slowly walk out. Oh no, I lost it. I absolutely lost my ever living shit. Yeah. I made a spectacle of myself and I do not regret it. I do not regret it one bit. And that was the last day I worked for that man.
I love the fact that you have no regret
No,
for making a
no,
spectacle of yourself. It sounds like it was warranted in that situation.
absolutely.
I have done things like that before. When I worked in marketing and I would have vehicles, people would be securing vehicles. And if they left the keys somewhere, I would take the keys, but I would not wait 3 days to let that situation come to fruition. It would be like, I'd let them stew for like 30 minutes trying to find the keys. So that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Did you have red flags before kind of the toxicity started at some of these places? Were there any clues that was going to happen?
There was, yes. Like I knew that this man had a serious issue with security, with like beyond what I had ever experienced. I had to leave early at about 2 or 3 o'clock one day to take my son to a doctor's appointment. And then afterwards I was out for dinner with my family and my work phone rang because I had to have a work line that was ringing at all times of the day. And it was him. And he screamed at me because I forgot to lock the filing cabinet. Like screamed at me. He knew I was in the middle of a dinner with my family. And he just started berating me over the phone and said that he doesn't know if I'm worth management because I can't even remember to lock a filing cabinet. And this was months before that. But yeah, it had definitely like red flags. If I'm being honest, red flags showed up the first week with the woman, but like I didn't really know much about him until a little bit later on. But I remember one of my first interactions with him was over the phone. And I had made a mistake on a load. And I had just started doing all these load documents, like filling them out. And it was a copy and I just had to change the information each time. It's logistics, right? And I forgot to change something. I think it was supposed to be from a certain amount of corn to a certain amount of wheat. I think I used like the corn document for wheat. And I mean, we're talking, I'm still in my first month, right? And so it's nobody at the farm was worried. They were like, oh, it's no big deal, right? You're new, right? You can fix it. It's fine. So she calls him on the phone and he's talking to me and I tried to explain, like, I'm really sorry, it won't happen again. And he cuts me off and says, I don't want to hear your sorries. Just don't have it happen. Don't let it happen again. That's all I want to hear is that it won't happen again. I don't want to hear sorries. And he like snapped at me, raised his voice and snapped at me. And I remember just like physically recoiling, like, well, that escalated quickly. Why are you yelling at me? Like, I got off the phone and she was like, oh, he's under a lot of pressure. He's, that's how they used to do things back in the day. He's an older gentleman. I'm like, okay. If you say so.
Yeah, it seems a little extreme for a tiny paperwork mishap.
Yeah.
What in you made you the type of person that doesn't follow the rules?
I really don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, I used to always follow the rules. I think I snapped, to be honest.
Is that what's coming for me one day? I'm just gonna snap.
So. I hope it does. I hope it does because it's real fun over here on this side. Yeah, no, I think I was when I followed the rules, I was masking and I was just trying to fit in and mirror everybody else. And then I would get burnt down on that. And then I would just stop, which was, I mean, regularly in school, I would go from having straight A's to failing, just back and forth, back and forth. I mean, I almost didn't graduate because I skipped like 47 days of my senior year. But my junior year, I had straight A's. I would do everything I was supposed to do, and then I would get burnout, and then I would just say fuck it all and not do any of it. And as fun as that was, it was also like really traumatic to me to kind of be flopping back and forth all the time, and then nobody believed in me, and I had a lot of things going on there. I wasn't able to keep relationships long, extended relationships. And so eventually I realized, and actually I attribute a lot of this to my partner, who I've been with for 10 years. I was still in that cycle when we got together. And he was the first person that I've ever met that made me feel like it was okay to be me. It was okay to be me. And every time I have some crazy idea, like, I mean, I have so many business ideas that I write them down in a little notebook, and it's like, it's getting pretty full. I mean, I currently have 3 like sort of active businesses right now. Every time I come up with an idea, he's just like, that's great, babe. That's a great idea. It's never, how are you going to do that? I don't think it's going to work. I think it's stupid. Never. And so I think that has helped a lot with me coming out of my shell and realizing, hey, not only is it okay to be me, but it's actually preferable, and me doesn't, if I'm being my true authentic self, then I'm not following all the rules, because the rules don't feel authentic to me. They just don't. But now it's like, I don't go from following all of them to following none of them. I follow the ones that feel good for me. If I were to go back to school now, like when I was in college, I graduated with high honors because I love school. I love learning. If I hated it, I wouldn't have even gone. I wouldn't have even gone. Whereas in high school, it's like I was just doing anything to feel, I don't know, to feel free. Mm-hmm. Which was not doing my homework, not going to school, not giving a damn, So I'm a little bit more balanced now. I don't know if that answered your question.
It did.
Okay.
So many people struggle with being their authentic selves. They feel like they're not good enough. People will judge them. People will think crazy things about them, talk behind their back. How empowering is it to be able to be you in all your glory?
It's incredibly empowering. And to release that fear of being talked about, of being looked at as weird or, different, of being outcast, is just, it's like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. And the way that I live now, I mean, I was a shell of a person before, and now I'm actually like, I'm a real whole person. I love every day, and if you can say that you're living your best life right now while adhering to society's demands, good for you. You're probably not being entirely honest with yourself, and that's fine. You find that out on your own time. But if you can look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm not actually comfortable with this, I implore you to give it a try. Just do something today that screams you, that doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. Sing from the top of your lungs, sing in falsetto instead of talking. I do that all the time. My family loves it. Kidding. Like, just do anything, go for a walk, go spinning, go bake if you like to bake, go bake your neighbor a loaf of bread. If you hate baking, do something else, right? Do something that speaks to you. When you wake up in the morning, think to yourself without any constricts, without the thought of time, money, obligations, responsibilities. Second you open your eyes, what do I want to do today? Do that thing. Do it.
I love it. And we're going to make that a challenge for everybody watching and listening. A couple weeks ago, we did another challenge about complimenting somebody, or as I say, complimenting. So this week, your challenge is to wake up and do something outside of your comfort zone, but that is authentically you. Don't get arrested. We are not telling you. We are not telling you to do things
Yeah.
that necessarily are against the law, but you can break
No
some
streaking,
rules.
no looting.
Love it. Love the parameters. How tough was it for you to get to that point of saying, you know what, I'm me, this is who I am. If you don't like it, tough shit.
It was very, very difficult. It took me, I mean, my entire life until the last, I would say, like 2 years, I really started to kind of own it. But it wasn't a linear journey. It wasn't just from point A to point B. I was thrown back several times. It's okay to be me. No, it's not. It's okay to be me. I don't think it is. It might be okay. Nope, definitely not. And so, and I still do experience that some days. I really honestly do still experience that some days, but I'm now so comfortable with myself that I can identify when those feelings are happening, and I sit with them. You know, I sit with them. Maybe I'll journal, or I'll talk to my partner, or I'll talk to some of my friends. And then the next day, I don't give myself any more than a day. The next day, I'm back at it. I'm back to myself. Like, okay, that was a great day where I just sat and watched Netflix and cried and ate a shit ton of carbs. But today we're gonna work. So
I also love carbs, so that's fantastic. You said you went through a couple cycles when kind of starting your own business, and it wasn't until you realized that, like, hey, I don't have to follow the rules. I need to do this my way. It took until then until you were successful. So how was that progression for you to go through kind of those waves of like, I'm doing this, nope, it's not doing what I needed it to get to the point where you're like, wait, this is how I need to do it, and now you found success?
well, there's many different parts to that. There's many different moving parts. So not only was I not structuring my business in the way that would be best for me, but I also wasn't doing the businesses that were best for me. So my first business was a jewelry making business, which was fun. But if I'm being 1000% honest, I started that business out of spite. Don't ever start a business out of spite, people. It's not good. So I enjoyed it, but I did not really have any idea how to sell anything.
Mhm.
And therefore I very irregularly sold. It was not sustainable at all. And so eventually I gave that up. And I started a jewelry making supply business after that, because I was actually working for a woman who owned a huge inventory of jewelry making supplies, and she was retiring. So she sold it to my partner and I at a fraction of the cost. So I basically, like, overnight had a jewelry supply making business. And when I put forth the effort into that, it actually did really, really well. I did not want to. It was not fun. All the teeny tiny little things, like taking pictures of them and then making sure that the lighting was good and then putting them up with the listing, just over and over and over again. Repetitive jobs are not great for people with ADHD. And they're just really not. Like, I was so bored, unbelievably bored. It was like pulling teeth. So I eventually finished that up. I sold it. Like, I got to the point where early last year, I was just like, all right, these beads are usually $20. They're yours for $3. Come get them. Come on. And it's just like, let's get rid of this. So got rid of that business, sold that off. And then I started a bookkeeping business because I was, into the bookkeeping. I started bookkeeping because I took accounting 111 in college and I got 102% in the class. And I was like, oh, look, something I'm good at. I'm going to do this. So, and then, I did bookkeeping for a couple of different companies, the grain trading company, and then my last job. And at my last job, my employer loved me and I did really, really well. And he was always complimenting me, which kind of brought up my confidence level so that when I went to go leave, I was like, okay, I can do a bookkeeping business. And here's the thing. I like the daily ins and outs of bookkeeping, but I don't like cleanups. I don't like big projects that there's a lot of unknowns, right? I like it when systems are already in place and then I'll just like do the work. And I also don't like talking to the clients and like chasing after them for information all the time, which those two things that I don't like were 90% of my business. And I was just like, oh God, this is terrible. This is terrible. So right around that time that I was realizing maybe I don't want to do this, I actually had a mental breakdown on August 31st, August 30th, August 31st-ish of 2021. And so after that breakdown, it was pretty bad. It was, yeah, it was pretty bad. It was rough. I had a really, really hard time going back into my bookkeeping business. I couldn't market myself anymore as a bookkeeper. It just didn't feel right. It just did not feel right. I finished, work. I continued to work for my current clients, but I told them all. And luckily I had been taught to find ideal clients. So I didn't have people that were like, well, this is ridiculous. You need to work. No. I had all women clients who were like, absolutely, honey, you do you. If you need me, you just let me know. And I was like, thank God. So I took, about 2 weeks off and I came back and I continued to work, but I still couldn't market. And that was around the time that I started talking to, I started figuring out what I wanted to do. I started looking into myself, looking into my personalities. I started going to counseling, getting diagnosed with the CPTSD and the ADHD, which I was diagnosed as a child with ADHD, but then it was kind of ignored for decades. So once I really started working on myself and figuring out who I am and what I want to do and how I can do it in the best way for me, then I started talking to other people about it. And that was when people started referring to me as a coach. So then comes business number 4, the coaching business. And I forgot your question, but I hope I answered it.
I'm pretty sure you did.
Okay.
How great does it feel now to be in this coaching business and to be and feel free and to be you and to be successful with all of that?
So it feels wonderful to be free and to be me. It feels wonderful to be able to split my attention on people and art, right? And my coaching business does not feel wonderful right now. If I'm being 100% honest, which I tend to try to be, doesn't feel 100% great right now because I am running into a roadblock here. So I have had several clients. They have been happy with my work, but I've got to the point where what I was charging wasn't sustainable for me. So I had to move it up a little bit. And I'm not talking a lot. I mean, I'm talking like I have a super high touch 2 to 3 sessions, 2.5 to 3 hours each program, which also includes a written PDF summary and an audible PDF summary, because I try to be as, accommodating to everybody as possible. And then it also comes with a 1-hour follow-up. So we're talking anywhere between 6 to 10 hours of one-on-one time, plus a PDF summary and an audible summary for $9.99. Like it's super, super inexpensive, especially in the coaching realm. Some people would charge like $10K for that. And I'm like, there's no way I could do that. But what the problem that I'm having is that the people that I'm trying to help are people that can't afford that. They can't even afford half of it. It's not that they don't see the value. It's that they're like, you don't understand. I've struggled my entire life. I don't have savings. I don't have $1,000 in the bank. I don't have a credit card. I don't have these things. And not that I would want anybody to go into credit card debt to hire me anyways. But what I'm seeing is that I saw a need. I tried to meet it in this way. And it's not working out the way I thought, but that's okay, right? Because that's when the consulting idea comes into place. I do not want to burden any neurodivergent or trauma affected people, they have already been struggling. I know that struggle, and I don't want to put them through that. But businesses, not only can they afford it, they need it. And when we start with the businesses, like we were talking about earlier, we can have a trickle down effect. Instead of helping one person at a time, we can help a whole community of people at a time, right? And even if, like I was talking with a friend about this before I jumped on here, and she's like, you have to be comfortable with the fact that these businesses will likely hire you for something and then not implement 99% of what you tell them to do. And I said, that's okay. You want to know why? Because even if they're not going to be listening to me, the employees are. And they're going to go, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be treated. Okay, right? So to answer your question, feeling authentically me feels amazing. And because I'm authentically me, I can see that this isn't working in the way that I wanted to. So I need to go back to the drawing board. And I think that that's amazing. I think that that's fantastic that I have the foresight to look into, my business and see, you know what, we're going to just shift a little bit, right? We're going to do a little pivot.
We always got to do a little pivot. That's what life is about.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about starting their own business?
Okay. So if you're thinking about starting your own business, I would say, what are you looking to do and why, right? Are you looking to do something that you really, really love? Are you looking to do something to make money? If you're looking to do something to make money, I wouldn't do it, especially if you are a neurodivergent or trauma affected person, because it's going to you might start off great. It's going to tax you. You're not going to enjoy it, right? Once you get into like what it is you actually want to do, or at least like the area that you want to work in, do you have startup? Do you have starting capital? If you don't start with a product, start with a service, right? Services have a lot less overhead. They are a lot easier to get going. And then once you make a little bit of money, you can put that towards a product-based business if that's what you choose, right? The biggest thing is to really release any guilt or shame, number one, that you have around having accommodations, and then give yourself those accommodations. You are your own boss, right? Like the power's in your hands to do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. If you're a service provider, if you're a coach and you don't want to do one-on-one Zoom calls, don't do them. Do Voxer, or do in person, or do something else, right? There's so many different ideas. Like if you're an artist and you don't want to do commissions because they make you sweat, girl, I feel you, right? They make me sweat too. Don't do them. Just don't listen to people who say you have to do them. No, you don't. You do what makes you feel comfortable, and you stay within that. You are the boss.
Yes. Yes. All right, Emily, we are going to take a quick turn here before I let you go. We're going to talk about tattoos. You can't see any of my tattoos because I'm actually in a hoodie today, even though it's May. But I love tattoos, and I think tattoos tell an amazing story. I know you have a couple tattoos, so I would like to hear a little bit about your current tattoos.
Okay. So I have a butterfly on my shoulder, and that one was it was my first, that was my first tattoo. I got it when I was 19 with my then best friend. We are now no longer on speaking terms, as of actually fairly recently, within the last year. So I would actually like to do something with that. But I mean, it's fine the way it is, but it's just a little purple and white butterfly. And then on my lower back, I have the good old tramp stamp that people thought was such a good idea to get so many years ago.
Why did we think that?
I don't know. But it's Angel Wings, because my nickname in high school was Angel. And so I would really like to get like a huge back piece and like get that covered up, get the butterfly like incorporated into like a forest scene. I think it would be wonderful. but it's in the future for sure.
What else is in the future tattoo wise?
So I have one that I'm getting in less than a month. And it's called, and I believe I'm saying this right, it's called an unalome, which is it's a symbol for the journey to enlightenment. And it's a symbol that's used in Buddhism and Hinduism. And so it's very, very simple, but it's basically, it shows, see if I can so it shows chaos at the beginning. So it's a line that kind of goes like this, and then it goes like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you're like struggling in life. And then it shows a straight line, and that's when you're actually kind of starting to figure things out. And then it shows like 3 dots at the top,
Mm-hmm.
which is enlightenment, right? And then at the very, very top, there is a lotus flower. So I think it's gonna be really good, and I'm gonna get it right here. And there is rules that go along with having this, because it's a sacred symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't have it below my hips, I think is what it was. I'm not supposed to have it anywhere near my chest. So that's why I chose my arm. And you're also not supposed to put it pointing down. So if you look up on Pinterest, it looks prettier going the other way, but that's actually extremely offensive to those cultures. So I will not be doing that.
I'm pretty sure as you were describing it, I have definitely seen it before. So I think that's very cool. How does it feel that you have to incorporate these rules into your tattoo?
So I think that I don't mind that at all. I don't mind that at all, because I don't want to be somebody who is culturally offensive to people that, I'm a white woman living in America. What kind of person would I be? I guess when it comes to those rules, I'm more interested in ignoring the rules that say don't have any rules about that. I guess which is kind of, it's not really a rule, but I think there's a big portion of our country that's like, oh, everybody's too offended nowadays. Just do whatever the hell you want. I think that's extremely offensive. And so that's not so much, I don't see it as a rule. I see it as more of a personal, I don't know, just like something that I uphold in myself personally, and just not be an asshole, I guess.
That's a great rule right there. Just don't be an asshole. Emily, where can people find you? So if they want to talk to you about your coaching, if they want to talk to you about how to get amazing mermaid hair, where can people find you?
Sure. I am on Facebook almost exclusively. I have a business page, Emily LaPrairie Coaching. I also have a business page, The Bohemian Braider, because I'm a braider. And then I have a business page, Imagination by M, which is where I showcase some of my art. I'm actually just reviving that one. And then I have a group on Facebook called Neurodivergent and Trauma Affected Entrepreneurs. I am also on TikTok and Patreon as the tag Embrace Diverse Thought.
Excellent. Emily, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I really appreciate your opening up and giving some great advice on business and just on life in general. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Claudia. It was wonderful talking to you.
I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Emily as much as I did. I truly appreciate her sharing how important it is that you feel fulfilled in your work environment. And it's important that we stand up for ourselves and make sure that our own needs are met. So remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.